Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Los Banos Talk. My name is Justin Collins. On tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about the city manager position. And as many of you already probably know, the city manager was fired a couple months ago, and we've been on the look for a new city manager. I'm going to give you an update on where the city is with that and when we could realistically expect a new city manager. And I'll be giving you all that information in just a moment, right after a brief message from our sponsor. Hey everyone, it's me, Justin, and I want to tell you a little bit about Los Banos Drug. It's located at the corner of 6th and J Street in downtown Los Banos. Some of you may not know, but it's actually a full-service pharmacy, convenience store, and diner as well. You can get any drug prescription filled here at the pharmacy, and delivery to your house is free. They not only deliver in town to Los Banos, but actually out into the country as well. And the free delivery isn't just for prescriptions, it's also for any item in the store. You want toothpaste, you need deodorant, or anything else you might think of, it can be delivered straight to your home for free. And if you're in downtown, you gotta try out their diner. They're open Monday through Friday. Breakfast is served from 8 a.m. to about 10:30 a.m. and lunch is served from 11 to 2:30 p.m. Every week, the menu changes and rotates. Every day has its own special. So come on down and try the food. Or if you need an item delivered to your home, try out their free delivery by giving them a call at 209-826-5834. Los Banos Drug Fountain. Local business serving the local community needs. And we're back. Thanks for watching. Now, you probably recall that a couple months ago, we actually fired our last city manager, Alex Terrazas. And the reason for such was actually pretty straightforward. Maybe some of you recall that a few months ago, we had a serious problem with getting our trash service. People were not getting the trash bin service, and it was causing a real problem. Well, the city council had directed the former city manager to file former paperwork showing that they were not in compliance and that Republic Services at that point would have something on paper holding them to what they needed to do. And also with such, this would then serve as something to hold them to it and could ultimately result in them being sued for basically damages and breach of contract. This was the first step, and they had been constantly badgering the city manager about doing this, and he just simply wasn't. And he kept kind of doing his own thing. And there was times where he was even caught looking for other jobs. And then when it was time, and it's generally common, about 6 months prior to your contract end, it's generally pretty much standard practice for the contract to come up for review by the city. But what was odd was that no such thing occurred. I watch every city council meeting and I didn't see it come up. And then all the meetings regarding his employment became closed door meeting. And well, we know the rest is history. Everyone on the council voted to terminate him except for the current mayor, Tom Faria. He then continued to receive his paycheck and salary through June of this year, and the current police chief then stepped in and became the acting city manager and is currently acting city manager. After that, they began opening up an RFP, or request for proposal, and started taking bids for the contract to find a new city manager. And one company was selected, and this meeting is posted on YouTube where all these different contractors put in their bid and explain what they would be looking for in a potential city manager. And since then, we've basically heard nothing. There's been a few closed session meetings. The most recent closed session meeting on this on YouTube, they didn't even report out on YouTube, so technically we don't really know what they said. Now, granted, I was told that no decision was decided, but because they didn't report out technically, it's violating the law, and also there's no public way of really knowing what, if any, action was technically taken. But I asked and no action was taken. So at this point, the hiring of the city manager honestly feels like waiting outside the Vatican and waiting to see the white smoke to know a new city manager has been chosen. It's been incredibly secretive, and the truth is it doesn't actually have to be. The reality is that many other cities let you know when they've come down to maybe 2 or 3 candidates. Some cities require that the resume become public record as part of the submission for the process. Our city, however, plays it extremely close to the chest and hides behind the idea that these are personnel files and HR records and that you don't have to know anything. The truth is that they could tell us a lot more. They could tell us what things they were looking for. They could tell us the qualifications they're looking for, and they could make parts of the interviews public if they wanted to, but they clearly don't. And that's not uncommon for our city because it always errs on the side of caution of tight lips, closed session meetings. So what do we actually know? Well, the process has been a little something like this, and this is pretty common. After the city manager was fired, we then put out a proposal to find a company to recruit a new one. We have done so, and that company has found some candidates. Out of that field of candidates, there's been numerous meetings and likely interviews that have taken place, and they've narrowed it down to a few candidates. At this point, it's likely getting more serious, and they probably narrowed it down to maybe 2 or 3. I say that because generally speaking, with an RFP, you can't really narrow it down to 1. You almost always have to narrow it down to at least a minimum of 2. And in the case of the trash contract we did, it got narrowed down to 3. So that's probably where we're at. The other thing we know is that the current acting city manager, Gary Breezy, was the police chief for our police department, and it seems as though he's scheduled to go back in October of this year. So what does that mean? That means that probably the new city manager is scheduled to take over by October. So in a roundabout way, we have a ballpark of when the city manager should be taking over and when this would be announced. Now, most likely the city is going to put it on its website once we actually have a name of a person. They're not giving us resume, they're not giving us any background or experience, but the reality is that once we have a name, we can actually figure that out ourselves. Now, the city manager is an extremely important position. It's kind of the equivalent at the city level of really the president. Many of us think that the mayor is the executive person who actually executes the plan, but not really. You can really think of the mayor of the city as really like the chief legislator or the head of the city council, kind of like more like Senate majority leader or House majority leader, something more like that. The city manager, you could compare for comparing this to the federal government, would be more like the president. Now, while the city manager is supposed to follow things at the discretion of the council and is hired by the council, in reality, the city manager has a great deal of power. And one of the reasons is because you can make ordinances all day long, but if you don't have someone who has the leadership and organizational capacity to execute the things, or is just dispassionate about executing the things, either not a lot will happen, or they could be rather clever and sort of let their personal opinions on how things should go and basically interpret the instructions, etc., in such a manner that basically implements their agenda and still technically follows the guidelines. On a federal level, an example of this would be how President Barack Obama created DACA. He was able to create DACA on the basis of, while he has to faithfully execute the law and that the law made types of immigration illegal, there technically isn't enough money to actually enforce it completely and totally. And so this allows him to make a discretionary call on who and how he enforces it. And so the same could be said of the city manager. In the case of COVID, we could have rules restricting restaurants and businesses and such, but then the city manager not really feel as though that's how we should be spending our time, and then basically direct his staff to not focus on that and focus on something else. The reality is that there's so many rules and so many ordinances that they can't possibly actually enforce them all. And so this allows them to kind of cherry pick which laws they want to focus on and which ones they don't. In this way, it makes the position very political and very important. So for now, this is about all we know. But the reality is that it takes time to sign a contract and make arrangements. These contracts usually last like time spans of maybe 4 to 6 years. So most likely we should have an announcement within probably, I would say, the next month or two probably by September, maybe mid-September. And then October is when we should actually see the person. How transparent this person will be with me and other press, what we can expect from this person, etc. At this point, I have no idea because none of the information is really public and technically no one's been officially chosen. But by this point and the deadline that seems to be set in October, we can reasonably assume that it's been narrowed down to probably 2 to 3 people. Now, with that being said, take everything I've said with a grain of salt. A lot of it's truly speculation based on events, based on precedent and what's happened up to this point. But I believe to the best of my ability that that is more or less what's going on. And again, the reason why we have to speculate is because this is about as secretive as selecting a new pope. And most of us in the city are outside waiting for the white smoke. If you haven't already, please like, follow, subscribe to Los Banos Talk. We have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and of course, LosBanosTalk.com. You can become a supporter of Los Banos Talk for just $4.99 a month and gain access to all the videos first and ad-free, plus gain access to bonus behind-the-scenes exclusive content and opinion pieces as well. Once again, my name is Justin Collins, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.